been?
Toilet?
Well, this took longer than it should have. In my defense, I was kept busy with a lot of other things. Collabing with my friends in a Mario Kart video.
Alright, SRK, Seven Night Labyrinth. I mentioned this before. Do you know what SRK is?
Senran Kagura.
No, so close.
No, I don't.
And playing a bunch of games religiously that were on my backlog. Some retro achievement stuff.
Near perfect first level? That's not bad. I just had my ass clench. Grip. I had my ass clench there, genuinely, because I was like, oh, that can kill Erica. That can kill Erica. This can also kill Erica. God damn it. What? What do you mean she got hit by a 16?
And that's not even counting my ever-changing work schedule. Because hey, go figure, I actually have a work life.
And to add insult to injury, my dumbass bought Metroid Prime 4 while editing this. What the fuck?
But that's not what the point is. The point is, it's finally time we can talk about Wario Land 2. And hey, there's actually a little bit more for me to talk about. Hopefully. Now, I don't know how long the script's going to be, and I guess we'll see by the end of this. The game was released actually quite a ways apart from the other two, coming home in 1998. If I'm correct, it was also the launch title for the Game Boy Color. That's the version we're going to be playing, by the way. To my knowledge, there isn't any gameplay differences between the two, but, you know, always looking prettier is a plus in my book. Strangely enough, this is the only Wario Land game that's not on any of the Nintendo Retro Switch emulator things. By the time this video actually comes out, the Virtual Boy one will be released, and, well, Virtual Boy Wario Land's already on that. Go figure. You know, despite being part of this franchise I love, I don't know a single thing about the game before playing it now. I mean, I knew about the intro, the first cutscene, and that's kind of about it. I'm in the dark for the rest of the game here. Like always, I'll quickly run through the story. It's pretty short this time around. On a quiet and peaceful morning, Wario was resting happily in his castle, which presumably is from the first game, when suddenly, intruders have broken and stole Wario's treasures from his last adventures. It's no secret that Captain Syrup and her pirates are back at it to torment Wario, and clearly, he's not going to have that. And that's kinda it. Told you it was shorter. As I mentioned in the Wario Land Virtual Boy video, I do consider 2 to take place basically directly after the first game, which kinda sounds stupid now that I say that out loud, but you get my point. The castle is near identical to the one in the second best ending of the first game, so I've always considered it to be canon. There's also a little extra blurb in the same section under the story that says, Wario Land 2 is much better than any of my previous games. Why, you ask? Because in this game, I'm immortal. There is no game over. With multiple endings, you can play my game many times. Isn't that great? We'll get back to that. Let's talk about the game itself, yeah? As the story says, some of Captain Syrup's pirates raid Wario's castle and steal his treasure. But not only that, they start flooding the place too, and throw a giant alarm clock in there just to piss him off. Sheesh. Shit in this toilet and don't flush while you're at it, won't ya? Just like that, the game begins. Chapter 1, Story 1. What am I playing, Fire Emblem? I kind of forgot about that. Unlike the last 2 games, there's actually considered chapters in Wario Land 2. I usually like to go level by level in my reviews just to touch all bases, but for the sake of making things easier, I'm probably just going to talk about the chapters as a whole. It just makes it easier on the long run, and even if that makes it, you know, a little harder for editing me, but editing me can deal with that problem later, yes? Waking Wario up, we can already talk about one of the biggest changes in this game from the previous ones. That being the emphasis on coins. I guess it must have been the people who felt the same about how coins seemed kind of useless in the Virtual Boy game and made an entire game about them in 2. They work a lot differently here as well, but we'll get into that sort of shortly. Wario himself still has most of his moves from the previous games, being a shoulder charge and a ground pound, and an enemy throwing attack. Working the same as usual, but now we also have a high jump. By holding up and jumping, Wario will slightly jump higher. Admittedly, it's not that terribly important, but it's nice to have in a case. As Wario mentioned in the manual, he is actually invulnerable in this game. Kind of. Instead of getting hurt or losing a life like anything, Wario just simply gets knocked back and drops a few coins on the ground. Which, well, I think the idea is neat. I guess enough people were complaining about the difficulty in the last two games. I mean, yeah, they were hard. You saw that firsthand from the first game, but I never really got a game over, and I still had plenty of lives by the end of it. These games were made for children back in, like, 1995. My problem is that isn't immediately shown, but it'll get more prominent in later levels, because while you can't die and you only take knockback, the game kinda gets spammy with its enemies and obstacles. It'll be more prominent as we get into the later parts of the game, but that whole knockback mechanic feels like the same way it would be in like a Castlevania game. While Wario doesn't take proper damage, that doesn't mean he isn't affected by the enemies. Some enemies will give Wario a form change called a reaction, and I'm not calling it that. This basically just means he can take different effects, like being flattened for crawl braces with slight hover capabilities, setting his ass on fire to ignite certain blocks in the way, or becoming a spring to bounce up super high. You know, all sorts of things. But for all the useful effects, there's also the ones that will completely waste your time. Zombie Wario makes you move slow and have to find a light source to change back. The Bee Sting makes you float upwards uncontrollably until you hit a ceiling. And Crazy Wario. No, I do mean Drunk Wario, actually. It doesn't do shit. Flat out just wasting your time until you find another patch of water. I hate to say it, but that's going to be a kind of recurring theme for this video. I mentioned earlier that the coins do quite a bit more in this game, and, well, they do. Like all the previous Wario Land games, you'll find treasure at all the levels. Like in Virtual Boy, every level has one. But instead of finding a key and unlocking a door or something, you find a door and you play this reaction-based memory game. You gotta pay coins to enter. The slower the speed, the more coins you gotta pay. Okay, well, it's a kid's game. How hard could it be? Let's just try normal out. Oh, you're joking, right? How am I supposed to react to that in time? It's at this point of a video, I have to stress that I have an extremely short-term memory and even worse image recognition. Maybe if I was younger I could do it, but nowadays, absolutely not. I'd have to pick easy for each time I do it, and that's a whole whopping 200 coins. Even still, I can mess it up sometimes. It just kind of feels insulting, but I can't even do the easiest difficulty on these. Calm yourself, Queenie. We've just started. There's also a different minigame at the end of every level where you have to guess a number from 0 to 9 from the flipping panels. I actually liked this one a lot more, as it felt more fair to my standards. Though, you gotta pay 50 coins for every time you want to flip a panel, and sometimes the one that flips is about as useful as hits on a ball. For winning the panel, you get a rectangle. Apparently this is a piece of a picture, but I'm not entirely sure what it's all for. The game didn't really tell you up front, so I'm not entirely sure. Let's get back to the game proper, shall we? After taking care of the alarm clock and Wario hits with the "I threw up" pose, we're off to turn off the giant faucet that Wario has, for some reason. What does this take place in the Mario Sticker Star universe? Good lord. Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. This is our first taste of the water controls in this game, and... okay. I don't care what the manual says. Wario feels like ass in the water in this game. The swimming controls just feel very awkward, like you're sort of pressing A to swim in a direction, but it also feels like you're just being jostled by the water. I feel like there's more water in this game than the first game, too, which is even stranger. Maybe I'm just imagining that, though. My point in the matter is, swimming felt the worst in this game than it has in the free games so far. Well, I'm still questioning why Wario has a big-ass faucet in his castle. We've got to unflood the place, too. Where we get more water swimming. We get also introduced a Bubble Wario, which floats upwards uncontrollably. But it also goes through the little river rapids here, which, it's nice, I suppose. Well, we're already here, done with the flood. Maybe this game will be shorter than I think it is. Here seems like a pretty good time to mention, but there are 5 levels in every chapter. And I don't really intend on talking about every single one of the levels in the chapter. Some of them are just flat out not that interesting or don't give me that much to write about. Kinda lame to say, well, there was this transformation and this, or, well, there's some spot with these coins. So I'm probably just gonna sound like I'm blitzing through this more than I really intend to, but that's kind of why. I'm sorry if it seems like I'm skimming over this game, but there's not really much I can talk about in the grand scheme. And, like that, we're on the final level of Chapter 1. Defeat of a giant snake. Giant snake? Did the pirates put this here too? Why is there a giant snake? Where did this guy come from? Every final level of a chapter is a boss level, and I hear you ask, Piranha Queen, how does a boss level work in a game you can't take damage in? Well, it's quite simple. Instead of getting hit or taking damage for the boss only, it catches you with an attack. You get thrown out of the arena and you have to go back. With its HP fully refilled. Wasting your time. Every boss does this. Well, a snake isn't exactly hard to fight. It's certainly annoying if you keep bumping into its head. It kind of just bumps you around unless you hit it directly on the noggin. Whatever. Now that we're done with that, it's time for Chapter 2. And we're going back to the SST Cup? Gotta say, I thought that would be later on in the game, huh? Also, return the hen to her nest. What hen? Apparently, Wario's hen. Something he surprisingly cares deeply about, as the manual says. This is where one of my biggest issues starts to really come into play. Picking up enemies mechanic. Because Wario no longer has any power-ups to use properly, and most of the enemies don't even hurt Wario, and if they do, well, you only get knocked back. Most things are done by using enemies properly, like jumping off of them, throwing them, you know, yada yada. But for whatever reason, they make it feel super awkward in this game. I didn't comment much on it on the first 2 games, because it really didn't feel like it was that big of a problem, plus it really wasn't that major of a thing outside of grabbing coins, but this one, it's kind of their main stick of level design. When you're carrying an enemy, if you're close to a ceiling, they'll drop back on the floor, and this can get them stuck, and, you know. There's also specific blocks that need to be thrown into by an enemy. You can't progress without it, and sometimes they really like to do that after a long stretch of annoying platforming. While holding an enemy, I swear the jumping is slightly delayed and a little heavier. I can understand the last part, but why is it delayed? I need to make precision platforming over some of these. Why is it delayed? It just makes you end up dropping the enemy and then having to go back just to figure out what the hell you were grabbing. Never mind that. We finally found Wario's hen, and you simply just gotta bring it back to the beginning of the level and have it shit an egg. We get our first instance of Drunk Wario not long after, where I wasn't kidding when it said it just wastes your time. There's no special abilities, you just wobble around until you find a patch of water. I think the touch fuzzies get dizzy, but I wouldn't even argue it's nearly as engaging. After invading the SST Cup, we weigh anchor to try and stop Syrup in her tracks, but not before becoming extra thick! Fat Wario. Fatter Wario. You become a walking tank of destruction at the cost of being slow as all can be. Not much to say other than, well, you're even more invincible now. Alright, boss time on the teacup. Come out, Syrup! I've got you cornered! Wait, that's not Syrup. That's the big bird that I hate from the first game. It's surprisingly remarkably simple in this one. It doesn't spawn any birds, doesn't spawn any enemies, just dives down at you and creates an updraft. Just jump on it, I think, about 4 times and we're done here. Chapter 3. Maze Woods. That doesn't sound good. I don't know what it is with Mario games and having woods that decided to be mazes. And it's not even Mario games, just Nintendo games at this point of time. It starts with getting off the SST Cup via this owl lifting Wario. The controls are a little stiff, but they probably work the best out of any transformation so far. At least in my eyes. There's also these fishermen? Whatever. These fishermen with fake coins that can hook Wario. I think they're the only time they're used, strangely enough. I really like the idea of these enemies, even if they are just another roadblock for Wario.
When the lights out, it's less dangerous. Here we are now, entertainers. I feel stupid and contagious. Here we are now, entertainers.
There's this section with a turtle moving over some water here. I think the idea is kind of neat, but sometimes it overstays its welcome when you have to carry an enemy with it, as I mentioned earlier. Jeez, this guy must have ate his greens. He's freaking gigantic! The size of Wario and then some! And he's also like the easiest thing to kill in this game. Further up the tree, we have the Wario equivalent of Bramble Scramble from Donkey Kong Country 2, and that makes 2 jokes about DKC I've made in playing Wario games. As mentioned before, the owl controls are alright enough for these to not be that big of an issue. Only Wario has a hurt box, not the owl, so... here's the bees I mentioned before that puff Wario up. I mean, they do have some puzzles related to them, but most of the time they seem like they just wasted your time a little bit. Like that, we're already here at the boss itself. So much for a maze. Actually, I should be glad about that. Well, maybe I shouldn't have talked so much shit about the bees earlier, because there's a very big one here. He moves pretty damn quickly after the first hit, and if he hits you, it can just be really annoying just slowly flying out of the arena. But, you know, that's my normal complaint. Moving on, we're in a big city now. This is both my favorite and least favorite chapter for different reasons. I think the set pieces look great and have a great sprite seat. The first level's on a train, and you know how much I love that. But to counterbalance that, the levels here get really annoying with its enemies. Later on, there's these Molotov throwing guys into windows that can knock you off. You do get a nice Easter egg from a Nintendo logo, and hey, you can even go inside one of the letters for a surprise. That's pretty cute in my book. Unfortunately, I really don't have a lot to say about the city other than thinking the sprites look really nice. I think now is about as good a time as any to really explain my thoughts about the game just in a whole. As you've probably heard, I've been pretty negative all this time, and I don't truly mean to be, but it just comes across that way. I find the game to be a little boring at least, and aggravating at most. It sadly just didn't click with me as much as the first game, the Virtual Boy game, did. While what's here is good, and I like the ideas on paper, I just can't get onto some ideas of a level design. Especially the boss fights throwing you out of the arena every time you mess up a little. It feels like the game is wasting your time in a bad way. I usually don't mind seeing as, well, video games are usually good to pass the time, but this just kind of feels like you're constantly going in a circle ad nauseum sometimes. It's a shame, but that's just kind of how the game comes across. Moving on to the boss of Chapter 4, because, let's face it, there wasn't much else I could talk about. We're square up against a basketball-playing rabbit? Alright, this one's pretty rad, I won't lie. The ball physics feel a little wonky, but I mean, come on, you're literally playing b-ball, and you turn your opponent into the ball. That's Wario as hell. Oh, it started raining. I hope the rain isn't picking up on the mic. I guess we'll figure out later. And finally, the last chapter of the game. Back at Syrup's castle. Wait, she rebuilt it? Already? Damn, a pirate who doubles as an architect. Go figure. As you'd expect from the final few levels, the game gets rough. Well, as rough as it can get with a fat invincible being the protagonist. I spent longer here than the rest of the game just because of the platforming puzzles. In the second level here we get our first taste of Spring Wario. And Small Wario. Wait, why would I want to be Small Wario? That's a transformation? Okay, jokes aside, it makes you fit into crawl spaces and jump slightly higher, but like, this is the only time I remember ever seeing it to my knowledge. The third level here is actually quite interesting. You have 4 split paths and you need to kill the enemy at the end of each, only having access to 2 routes at a time. I'd honestly say it's probably my favorite level in the entire game. Next one here has Wario basically destroy the entire inner workings of the castle to find a secret door to progress. It's a little confusing to where to go, but I like this one also a fair bit. Kind of ashamed that my favorite levels happen to be in the very end of the game, but I think they're interesting. I really do. And finally, the last level, taking the fight to Syrup. Let's waste no more time than I already have, huh? Before I begin, would you like to know how long this fight took me? 35 minutes. 35 minutes. Oh boy, here we go. I'll quickly recap as best I can. The fight itself is much more involved than the first game's fight with Syrup, but still nothing major. She throws down bombs and minions. The bombs create a fire pillar you need to avoid or you'll get dragged out of a ring. And the minions you'll need to grab and throw into her twice. Then she has a second phase where she only throws bombs. This is what took me so long, because I thought I needed to throw the bombs back into her, when in reality... You throw them into the fire pillars to raise them up to hit Syrup. Do this twice and she's done so. Admittedly, how in the hell was I supposed to guess that? It's a bomb! I can pick it up! Why wouldn't it hurt Syrup? Whatever. This fight broke my spirit so bad. You could tell I was mad and wanted to get it over just by the footage, but... I spent long enough here to get this music ingrained in my head. I was tired. But we did it! That's Wario Land 2 finally done. Kinda. Well, Manual Wario wasn't kidding, because there are multiple routes and endings, but as you see by the video length, I didn't do those. I was burned out of the game by the city levels, and the Syrup fight only made it worse. I wish I could have given the game a fairer shake, but I got to the credits and turned it in for the night. Maybe one day I'll go back and finish it proper, but that's not going to be anytime soon. A disappointing ending by me, I'm aware, but I'd really like to move on now and just tackle something else. This game just really took it out of me. Until next time, my weeds and seeds. Until we probably look at Wario Land 3. Piranha Queen, out.